Hey, Husker fans, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is my co-host, Danny Gillette, and we're back for another episode of the podcast this morning, and we've got some Nebraska basketball to talk about after a rough weekend at Purdue. We also have some key veteran players that should be returning for the Nebraska football team, so we'll talk about that. Some more transfer portal intel, some more commitments potentially coming, and some other things there. So we'll get to all that in just a moment. Before we do, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get into the comment section. And Danny, how are you doing on this Monday morning?
I'm doing well. It's been a busy week or so, but a lot to get into. But between writing for the Patriots and their new head coaching hire and Mike Vrabel and Nebraska recruiting, I've been pretty busy.
Yeah, it has been a busy time for the Huskers, and with the NFL coaching stuff's going to be picking up here pretty soon. It does feel like things are starting to slow down with the transfer portal and stuff like that. But let's lead off with Nebraska basketball on Sunday. We'll start there. We'll get to the football stuff here in a minute. That's just the most recent thing in my mind. And wow, that was not what I expected from Nebraska. I didn't expect them to win. I didn't predict them to win that game, but I thought that they would put up a lot more fight. And to me, that was an example of when you allow one loss to turn into two, because they still, it seems like to me, didn't get off the mat from the Iowa game. And beyond that, this 3-point defense is just atrocious. We saw them have problems with it last year and they kind of fixed it, but way too many wide open threes for Purdue yesterday.
Yeah, way too many wide open threes. And I understand Purdue on the road is a tough place to play. I believe the Boilermakers had won 19 games in a row at home. Sounds familiar, like the Vault. But, yeah, it was just, a mess yesterday. And anytime Nebraska got any sort of momentum, Purdue would answer, like that. And it was just a tough day. You saw, like you mentioned, the defensive leaks a little bit and the defensive inconsistencies kind of rear their ugly head. And as you said, it's kind of been a theme over the past two games. We saw this a little bit last year. And thankfully last year we had enough offense to combat it. But today, it seemed like it seemed like everything was going in for Purdue. And quite honestly, I think you could pinpoint even the Creighton win as one where Creighton missed a lot of shots and could have easily won that game as well. So, you're kind of noticing an interesting trend here and not necessarily a good one.
Yeah, and I think when you look at, when I look at the game yesterday, there's two stats that really stand out to me. One is, obviously the fact that Purdue made 19 3-pointers on 33 attempts. So over 50% of their attempts were from the 3-point line, and they made 58%. But the other stat that is really, I think, shows how poorly Nebraska played on defense is that Purdue made 41 field goals and 32 of those were assisted. So that means that Nebraska, and you could see it watching the game, but players, I don't know what in the world they were doing, but the ball screen defense, the last couple of games especially, has been god awful. I mean, these guys just have they're over helping, they're not being disciplined, they're getting beat to the basket. I mean, that's part of the problem is guys are getting beat and then they're leaving open shots for other players. But like the over helping, like I don't know what was going on, but like in the first, maybe 5 minutes of that game, Purdue had 4 or 5 wide open shots. And like a wide open shot in college basketball is different from like a high school wide open shot. But if you're not like, if that contest isn't where the guy's face is, that's a wide open shot. And that was like almost all of Purdue's shots yesterday, at least to start the game. And so to me, it's just extremely discouraging because it's like you cannot go into, West Lafayette and not play defense and expect to hang around in that game. Like Purdue is too good of a team. They're one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. They're like in the top 30. And like, if you go in there and expect them to miss like wide open shots, that's just not going to happen. And so I don't know, the defense to me, I don't know how you go from, being like one of the top ranked in the KenPom and then just to being terrible, but they've kind of always been this way with their 3-point defense. I mean, they give up as many 3-pointers as almost any team in college basketball. And when you're giving teams that many open looks, like they're going to make them. So I don't know if they need to adjust a little bit, but yeah, the defensive communication and the helping and just everything on defense was bad. There wasn't a single good thing on defense yesterday. It was just freaking terrible all around. It was just bad.
Including the rebounds. Purdue out-rebounded Nebraska by a 33-20 margin, and some of those led to second-chance looks for a Purdue team that is already a very good shooting team. And again, this particular statistic wasn't necessarily a huge advantage, but Purdue won the turnover battle by a 10-17 margin. Nebraska had 17 turnovers. So turnovers are something that I've noticed the last couple games start to pick up a little bit, and this is also something that they've had trouble with, in Fred Hoiberg's tenure. So it seemed like all the frustrating trends came out again on Sunday.
And yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see where this team is projected, with like bracketology and stuff. I think they're still going to be projected in the tournament, but I really look at these next 5 games as being like critical for Nebraska. You've got Rutgers at home, Maryland on the road, USC at home, at Wisconsin, and at Illinois. And it's like, man, you're 2-3 in the Big Ten right now. Like, you got to find a way to win probably 3 of those 5 just to get to 5-5, because I still think this team has to win probably 11 games to make the tournament, at least 10 games. And if you lay another egg here, man, like it's going to be tough. So these next 3 games, they've got to get at least 2 out of the next 3. You've got Rutgers at home, Maryland on the road, US. I mean, those are all 3 winnable, but like you have to win those 2 games at home, or this team's going to be in real trouble and missing the NCAA tournament.
And that Maryland game is going to be tough too. Maryland gave them a challenge last season, so it's not going to be an easy stretch here. And this is going to be a real test to see where this team is at. I thought they were better than what they've shown lately. Maybe it's just a slump. We saw that last year a little bit, but right now is not the time to be getting into a slump. So we'll see what happens. But it seems like Michigan State, Purdue, like those 2 games in particular are games that have kind of made me wonder about this team. And like we kind of alluded to, all the bad things that this team struggles with came out on Sunday, and hopefully they can kind of regroup and get their act together before it's too late.
Yeah, they gotta figure some things out. I'm just not sure if the guys are just like being over aggressive with their helping and their hedging, but like they've got to make some adjustments, especially with their ball screen defense. I mean, it has just been terrible. It's either been, like wide open 3 or layup almost every time. So, and you look at the schedule, February, I don't know, it looks a little bit easier, but you start off, so after the 5 games I just talked about, then you've got your West Coast road trip to Oregon, who's really good, and Washington, which they're okay, but I mean, that's a game that's probably like a must-win game for Nebraska to make the tournament. Then you've got Ohio State and Maryland at home, Northwestern and Purdue or Penn State on the road, and then home against Michigan. So, definitely some winnable games in February, but there's not a lot of winnable games on the schedule. So really, everyone is important, and you just can't lay eggs like that. And that's why, looking back at that Iowa game, you're up by 15 points and you have a chance for a quad 1 win. That's why you have to win that game, because that Purdue game was always going to be tough to win, right? I mean, so like you needed to find a way to win one of those 2, and you had it sitting right there. And then the defense, I mean, it was the same thing against Iowa. I mean, guys were just getting wide open threes. Peyton Sandfort had some wide open threes, and it's like that's the one guy in the Big Ten you don't leave wide open. And I could say the same thing about a lot of Purdue's guys. So that part's been frustrating, and I think this team, is going to have to look itself in the mirror a little bit before Rutgers comes to town, and hopefully, being back in the vault will kind of get them going. But they got to find that edge that they had against UCLA, because they had it for about half the game against Iowa, and then I don't know what happened to it, but they have not.
I don't know. Yeah, I was mystified by that, but
I mean, 104 points is bad.
Yeah,
104 points is bad.
They scored what, like 50 and a half, or close to 50 and a half.
59 in the second half. So
I admittedly turned it off, halfway through the second half, but
yeah, I had to stop. I started writing stuff. I was like, okay, well, nothing's going to change here in these last 8 minutes.
But like you said, February is going to be a crucial stretch for Nebraska, and you don't really want to go into February with must-win games. You want to go into February kind of already comfortable in the tournament, a chance to boost your resume, and that could still be true. But now these games in February take on a little bit of an extra meaning.
All right, well, let's shift to some football talk. And I'm trying to think back. I don't think we've had any commitments since we did our last show on Thursday, but Nebraska has had some roster movement in the positive direction. And so one of those moves, Javin Wright, a linebacker who started 1 game in each of the past 2 seasons, got a 7th year of eligibility. So he's going to be coming back for the Huskers. It also seems very likely that Deshaun Singleton will be coming back. There's that whole JUCO junior college ruling. So he started his career as a JUCO. That hasn't been announced yet, but sounds like, according to Sean Callahan and other reports, it's just kind of, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. So if those guys do both come back, and starting with Javin Wright, because we know he's coming back after that's been announced, what's the impact there in the linebacker room, and how excited are you for his return?
A lot of people don't want, old faces to return. I'm in that boat, but Javin Wright is a guy that I want back. I mean, when you talk about the linebacker room and how much young talent there is, this gives them an opportunity to develop, because now you have veterans in Deshaun McCullough, Javin Wright, Marquise Watson Trent, guys that can kind of make an impact and a sizable impact while the younger guys develop. And so Javin Wright coming back is huge. And I think even though we have a crowded safety room with younger players, having Singleton come back is also big. Singleton has been around the program, obviously. He's been able to play at a high level when healthy. And, again, this gives more depth for the safety and linebacker room and a chance for the younger players to grow. And I do understand the sentiment that people don't want, the same players back. But I think in this case, having these two back is important for a young defensive unit.
Yeah, Javin Wright is interesting to me because you'll remember, or maybe some won't, but he started off as he played in that nickel role,
Yep.
that safety, hybrid role, which is kind of interesting for a guy who's 6'5", 230 pounds. So to me, it's like, I know our linebacker room is not crowded, but, pretty deep already. But, he, to me, is a guy that can be that nickel linebacker. And you can always use players like that. And he started 2 games over the last couple of years, but he's played more than that. He was hurt some last year. And I just feel like he's going to be a solid guy that can contribute and allow some of these other guys, McCullough and, Dawson Merritt, maybe that can allow them to, rush the passer a little bit more instead of focusing on coverage a little bit. So to me, it's just another, another tool in the toolkit for John Butler and another really solid player. And then looking at Singleton on the back end, to me, he would be, an immediate starter again at safety, along probably with Buford and Malcolm Hartzog. So I think that's a huge addition that would give Nebraska 3 kind of proven safeties back there. And, because they kind of were trying to add, they added Justin Rhett, he's kind of trying to be in the mix there. But I just think that Singleton, who's also pretty good in coverage, would be just a really solid, addition for this secondary, and probably as important as anybody they got, in the transfer portal. Maybe outside of Andrew Marshall, I think he's going to have a pretty big impact. But like, if you consider the 4 guys they added and you throw Deshaun Singleton in that mix, like, that's a pretty good haul for the secondary coming back.
And when you think about Wright, it's never been a lack of production. It's always been his health. And don't forget, he had the blood clot issue a couple of years ago as well. So there were some serious questions about his health as well. So I'm hoping he stays healthy and, can contribute the entire season. And he's been, unfairly bitten by the injury bug. So I'm excited to see him return. And, I highlight him because, again, health has been the issue. It's never been about production or wanting to play. So I'm hoping he can make it through next season healthy.
And yeah, just, you need as many quality experienced players as you can have on defense as possible. Like, I think that that's a good thing. And, you look at that secondary. I mean, the starting lineup could potentially be, Singleton, Buford, Hartzog at safety. And then you're looking at corner, Sayer Wright, I think Andrew Marshall.
Mm-hmm.
Those 5 guys might be your starting 5 right there with, I mean, the way Nebraska played it last year, they kind of had that big nickel type defense as they're kind of as a safety with their 3rd defensive back, or their 5th defensive back, I should say.
Yeah.
But then also, Jameer Khan in the mix. So, I like where they're at in the secondary. I think they've got a lot of interesting pieces, and you've got some young guys there, Mario Buford, Amari Sanders, Caleb Benning, Donovan Jones, all kind of in the mix. Jeremiah Charles. So
Larry Tarver, I think, too, right?
Yeah, Larry Tarver. I mean, so it went from being, where a couple of years ago it seemed a little light, and now I feel like they're right where they need to be in terms of, experience, talent. They've got a lot of nice pieces there. So at any rate, let's shift now to the transfer portal, and things have kind of slowed down a little bit for Nebraska after they picked up Elijah Pritchett last week, the tackle from Alabama. They've also picked up some other defenders too, Marcus Groves Killebrew from Arizona, which was I
Another
thought was
corner.
another nice pickup. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, they've added 3 corners, and I like them all. So I
Yeah.
like all those guys. And I know some people are down on Groves Killebrew because he's played at multiple places, but like he started games for Arizona last year. I mean, a lot of the time he was their number 3 corner because they had a freshman come in that was really good. But still, I mean, you got a guy who's played, hundreds of snaps for a Power 4 program. Like that's nothing to scoff at, especially a guy who was ranked in the top like 150 coming out of high school.
And honestly, who cares? Who gives a crap? As long as he doesn't cause issues with his teammates and is respectful to the coaches and doesn't cause a scene or whatever, who cares? I don't care if he's transferred to 7 schools. If he's a good player and he can contribute positively to the program, I'm happy to have him in. I know a lot of fans were kind of down. Oh, he's transferred so much. Who cares? Welcome to the new age of college football. Just don't be a problem and be respectful to the coaching staff. And I don't see an issue. I really don't.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it either. And it's not like,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, he could be another Sayer Wright type. I mean, he's got that type of talent. So
I'll
I
take
feel
another
like,
Sayer Wright type. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like the ceiling is pretty high with him, and I feel like the floor is pretty low because I mean, if the floor is what he did at Arizona last year, like that will play just fine in the Nebraska secondary. So I don't understand the negativity towards that addition, but it is what it is. There is one other player that we've kind of been talking about, Shayaz Pete from New Mexico State, my guy that I've been all over, 6'8", 320 pounds, ranked number 11th in the portal. He's still kind of in it with Nebraska. He made visits, but it seems like Sean Callahan's saying he's kind of trending towards Kentucky, so that might be a guy coming off the board. I know Nebraska already got their left tackle, so he probably wants to play left tackle too. And then I don't know if Elijah Pritchett would want to play right tackle because the money position's left tackle. So, I mean, that's another thing that you have to, warn about is all these guys have agents now. If you haven't noticed this, if you don't follow it that well, all these players who go into the transfer portal have agents, and their agents are looking at like what position is best to play to get to the NFL, or how does this team project to get you to the NFL. And so it's not going to surprise me if they miss on Pete. I do like their tackle room. I mean, I think that would, it's going to be interesting. What are they going to do with Gatula? Are they going to put Pritchett at left tackle and move Gatula to the right side? Is Grant Bricks going to get in the mix? So still some questions kind of lingering out there, but I still feel better about the tackle room with, Pritchett than without him. So I wish they could get Pete too, but that might just be too tough of an ask to, have one of those guys play right tackle. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
And Jonah Wilson, the wide receiver from Houston, is another guy that was projected towards Nebraska over this past week. And another wide receiver room. I mean, it was kind of funny because you posted on Husker Big Red. Dana Holgerson clearly didn't like what he saw with this group of wide receivers on the roster because, they're recruiting tall body types. They're recruiting physical wide receivers. You're seeing, that kind of NFL type of wide receiver, that 6'2", physical playmaker who can make things happen after the catch. So it's very clear that Dakeil Shorts and Holgerson want a particular wide receiver mold. They know what they want. They're going after it. And I'll be interesting to see where Jonah Wilson fits in the room because we have a lot of receivers right now.
Yeah, we do. And on Jonah Wilson, this is from Sean Callahan, but it sounds like, so this is kind of weird, but he says that he's going to be joining the team as a walk-on in January since the scholarship limit still constrains Nebraska until July 1st, which I don't really understand that part of it. But so that's why there hasn't been a formal announcement about his addition. So, I mean, from the way Sean Callahan's telling it, he's already committed to Nebraska, that being Jonah Wilson. So if that's true, I mean, that gives you 4 guys. What I really like about these guys, you got Dane Key, obviously, who's got 1 year to go. And you needed to bring in somebody like that. But Isaiah Hunter, Hardly Gilmore, and Jonah Wilson all have 3 years to play. And so you look at that with Ja'Cory, and you add Ja'Cory Barney to that mix. Carter Nelson, those 5 guys all have 3 years to play. And then you add in Cortez Mills, who's a true freshman. And this wide receiver room has
Mosey,
a lot of room.
I think.
Yeah, Mosey too. Yeah, Mosey. So this receiver room has a lot of room to grow. 7 really good players, I think. Nelson, will probably be a tight end, but still, I mean, a lot of pass catchers with, time to grow with Dylan Raiola over these next 2 seasons.
Yeah, a lot of weapons for the quarterback, a lot of big time playmakers, and it's just quite a difference from the wide receiver room, like say 3 years ago, or even 4 years ago. And I think it's a testament to how hard this coaching staff has worked in recruiting, and they're landing big time playmakers. Now it's about continuing to build and put up wins. And I think this is going to be a big year for Raiola as well as this group of wideouts.
Do you think there's any other positions that Nebraska is going to target in the portal? Here coming up. I mean, I feel like they're pretty close to their limit, but it sounds like they could maybe add, 2 or 3 guys if they could really, bring something to the team, I guess. So if there's any other positions out there that need to be addressed, what do you think they are, if any?
Maybe one more veteran running back. I know people are stressing about the running back position, but quite honestly, I would be willing to kind of, see what Connor Booth and Parker can do. I know Booth is a little banged up right now, but hopefully his injury will, obviously be taken care of by the season. But I would be okay with. I know they're freshmen, but letting Booth and Parker have playing time, and then you have Emmett Johnson, Quentin Ives, Mecky Nelson. So I know people are stressing about running back. I don't really see it as a major issue, but maybe one more veteran guy would be good.
And maybe they, because they haven't offered a running back, they haven't hosted a running back, they haven't really even contacted a running back that I've seen.
No.
So it makes me think maybe they're just going to go through spring ball and see how things are, and maybe that's a position they don't need to address. I guess we'll see. It's not like there's anybody in the portal right now. I mean, there's a few guys, but I just haven't checked on the running backs very much. So I don't even know if they're still in there. Like Wisconsin had a back that went in the portal. But yeah, I mean, I think Emmett Johnson is definitely that guy. I think he's going to be the number one guy, and I think there's some interesting pieces behind him. And yeah, hopefully that might be a question that kind of gets pushed to the spring at this point.
And if you need one, you have the spring portal window. So
I'd still like to see him add a a big defensive tackle, but I'm starting to feel like maybe that's not going to happen. So
no, I kind of got the same read on it too, but I think we'll have to see how these pieces fit together. I mean, I think this defense is going to look a little bit different than last year's. I think it honestly has a chance to be better than last year's, but we'll see how all the pieces fit. But I think overall they've done a really, really nice job in the transfer portal. I know Matt Rule has been about development and, recruiting players at high school and, developing them, but he's since changed his approach to fit the modern, quote unquote, game of college football. And I think it's worked.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see where they line up all the guys up front, but I'm guessing that Van Poppel will be the nose type it right now. And then you got Keona Davis, and then Williams Noweri. Elijah Judy also will be in the mix there. Is one of those guys that will play kind of on the interior. I mean, Noweri's a guy that I think will rush the passer, but he's probably going to be some of that maybe 5 technique too, or I don't know. It's just I'm really interested to see how they do that. Maybe they go with maybe they played more 4-man fronts, and that's something that I think would fit Nebraska's personnel pretty well.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the front you just mentioned, Noweri, Judy, Keona Davis, Van Poppel, that's not a bad front at all. I would be happy putting out that front in game. So we'll see what happens, but I trust John Butler to find the right combination, and I think this defense has a chance to be really aggressive and really let the younger players shine as well. I think you're going to see a lot of younger players make an impact this year.
Yeah, I think if you look at it for a 4-man front, that 4-man front actually sounds pretty good. With Judy and Van Poppel playing the tackle roles, I think Keona Davis could be a big defensive end. Sort of like and Dominican Sue was. I mean, I'm just like he can be that type of player where you can be like, in my opinion, he could be a rundown guy on the outside, set the edge, and then push him inside to rush the passer on 3rd downs or whatever. So
yeah,
it's just going to be. I just don't think we're going to see as much 3-3-5 as we did last year, and that's not a bad thing at all.
No, I don't think that's a bad thing at all either. And I think it probably suits the athletes that we have a little bit better to not run a 3-3-5. But we'll see what happens, and I'm really, really interested to see how that secondary room shakes out. And we mentioned the depth, and we mentioned the playmakers that they were able to get at the position, and then I'm really interested to see how it kind of that position battle kind of shapes up through the course of the spring and then fall camp.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that all kind of plays out, but the roster is coming together, so we'll wrap it up there, you guys. I'm sure we'll be back for another episode. I'm thinking on Thursday, and we'll kind of wrap up what's been happening. Look ahead to the next Nebraska basketball game, which is Rutgers on Thursday. So that's going to be a really important game for the Huskers. So we'll be previewing that, and we'll talk about everything else. So make sure you don't miss anything. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get into the comment section, and as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.